to this computer. And then I'm going to share my screen, which we will then begin. Okay. How does this look? Does this look okay? Or does this look a little weird? You can see over on this side, or over on this side, we can see all of the slides that I've created, yeah? Great. Okay, perfect. Okie dokie, and then we can go into slideshow here. Okie dokie, great. So, welcome everybody to building a freediving training plan with me, Brandon. Today we are going to be covering a lot of stuff. As I said, my background is in exercise science. I have a bachelor's of exercise science and kinesiology, my focus was primarily on ultra endurance athletes, but also worked a lot on strength and conditioning with a minor focus on nutrition. And so we're going to basically talking a lot. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Let me change the layout here so that, let's see. Let's look at content only. Can you guys still see my image somewhere, but we see the screen mostly instead as well? Okay, great. Perfect. Cool. Thanks, Vale. Yeah, I've got loads of experience not only working with athletes, but also in breath training, strength conditioning, through all of the one-on-one coaching that we've done through Freediving Family. Today, we're going to be primarily discussing the concept of periodization. And this is basically going to be the overview that we are going to follow throughout the day. If you have any questions, please do post them in the group chat. And then as we go from slide to slide or concept to concept, then we can go and answer those questions. Cool. All right. So first things first, what is periodization? Periodization is basically a scientific method in order for us to create a plan that takes a chunk of time, starting with where we are now and ending with where we want to be, and breaking it down into smaller and smaller chunks so that we can create a very specific plan of how we're going to get from point A to point B. This is something that many of you may have experienced in high school or in college when you were on a sports team. You may have experienced this if you've ever downloaded a training plan for a half marathon, for example. There's a lot of different applications for this. And for many of you, you may not have even realized you were following a training plan like this. But as we sort of go through, you may see some similarities between what we're discussing and what you may have done in your powerlifting days in college, or in your cross country days, or whatever it may be, your swim team days. Cool. So, basically, what we're looking at is breaking down a big chunk of time into smaller and smaller chunks so that we can plan accordingly, based on scientific understanding of muscular adaptations for sport. Yeah. So, these are the various phases here. So, we have our macro cycle, which is generally 3 to 12 months of time. Personally, for me, I like to break them down into groups of 3 to 4 months. That's a good amount of time to split everything up so that we can also keep track of testing things. But broadly speaking, between 3 and 12 months, this is your competition season, essentially. So for many people, this is a yearly thing. Some people, if we're talking about Olympic athletes, their macro cycles may even do four macro cycles that are 12 months long. Looking at, they are 17 or 16 years old now. How are we going to, in the next 4 years, get them from 16 to 20, where they will be competing at the highest level 4 years from now? I don't know. How do we do that? Crazy. Um, so macro cycles are the big chunks of time. This is basically from competition cycle to competition cycle, or testing cycle to testing cycle, as the main sort of guide for that. From there, we have mesocycles. Mesocycles are broken down into smaller chunks, generally between 4 and 6 weeks. And this is going to be where we really start to look at the types of adaptations that we want to be growing and building in our bodies. Um, uh, and that's all I'll say on that for right now. We'll go into that a little bit more. Microcycles are then broken down week by week. So within the mesocycles, we go week by week. And from there, we are talking about the load that we are putting onto our body. How much, in our case, how much CO2 or how much low oxygen, how much hypoxia are we putting ourselves under? How much physical strain are we putting our bodies under by doing bicep curls at the gym? How many reps? How many sets? We increase that week by week. And then microcycles are literally the breakdown of day by day. What is your gym session going to be on that day? What is your breath hold session going to be on that day? Yeah. Is that all making sense? Cool. Great. Before we move any further, important to note that this workshop is basically breaking down about 2 semesters or like a semester and a half worth of content into an hour and a half presentation. So we're going to go through a lot of stuff very quickly. I'm going to do my best to try and make sure that it all makes sense for you guys. A lot of this stuff you can look up online after this. We'll watch this video again at a later date if you want to, and that can also help you understand again. But a lot of these concepts are much more further fleshed out online. If you just look up periodization training, you'll see a lot more stuff written about it. But we're going to try and apply it to specifically breath hold training, but we'll also look at how it applies to strength training or endurance or stretching or all that sort of stuff as well. Cool. Okay, so how does adaptation work in the body? Basically, what we do is we are putting our body under some kind of load. A load can be anything from high CO2. That load is higher than what we usually have, and so the body will adapt to it. A load can be doing a bunch of bicep curls. That is a load on the biceps. Doing manual labor, like for example, if you are a mover and your job is to help people move and you move heavy furniture from one house to another, your body will adapt to lifting heavy stuff all the time. If you go up up to elevation, your body experiences low oxygen. That is a load that the body is being exposed to. And as a result, the body creates more red blood cells. It becomes more efficient with its oxygen usage. So then when you come back down from elevation, you have greater oxygen carrying capacity. This is what a lot of endurance athletes will do. Yeah. So what we're doing is we are putting our body under a load, putting a load on the body. And then over time, as we get more and more exposure to that load, the body adapts itself to be able to meet that stress on it. Then once we have met that stress, we then increase the load again. And then our body has to work to adapt to that load. And so on and so on and so on and so on. Yeah. So in doing this training, that is the whole goal of what we're doing, is we are trying to put a greater load on our body than what we usually experience in a day. And over repeated training sessions, our body will adapt to it. Easy. Apparently. So one thing to mention first, so we'll talk about this a little bit later as well. We need to move away from thinking of our freediving training sessions as something where all the time we do a new personal best at the end, or we go for a max at the end. Or we try and do a few more, a few more meters or a few more seconds on a breath hold every single time. If we think about adaptation, how do we go to the gym? We go to the gym, we lift a bunch of weights, but that weight stays pretty consistent for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And then once our body has adapted to it, we then up the weight. In the pool, many of us in the past, and I see this quite often with competitive athletes now as well, they are constantly trying to add an extra meter or two onto their dive, or a extra 10, 15 seconds onto their breath hold every single time. What do you think would happen if we did that in the gym? Every time we go to the gym 3 times per week, we added 2 kilograms onto our bicep curls. Pretty quickly, we would max out and injure ourselves, or we would hate the training and we wouldn't want to go do it, right? So why then do we feel like, or why do many people feel like it's okay to do this in freediving? It comes down, I think, to just a mental sort of change that we need to adopt in freediving, where we need to move away from thinking of sessions as a way to constantly add a little bit more, add a little bit more, add a little bit more, but instead move to, okay, we are putting our body under a load. We do this for a set amount of time until the body adapts to it. From there, we increase the load further, and then our body adapts to it. Yeah? So this is how we want to think of our training from now on. We don't want to do max breath holds at the end of every single breath session. We instead want to think of it as keeping an elevated level of CO2 or a low level of oxygen for as long as we can across the session, and that stable level of stress on the body is what is going to cause the adaptation. Cool. Any questions? Excellent. Great. Cool. Alrighty. Ooh. No question. Great. Okie doke. Cool. So we move into our first cycle, which is our testing cycle. Obviously, it's very important for us to figure out where our starting point is if we want to then be able to make some goals and figure out where our ending point is going to be. So we need to figure out our physical abilities, our mental relaxation, our physical relaxation. What does our technique look like? What is our strength, general fitness, etc.? This is very important, as this is what is going to let us design goals that are going to let us get from where we are now to where we want to go. Now, with this, we want to quickly talk about comfort max versus a max attempt. Now, comfort maxes, or so a max attempt, basically, as you all know, is when you hold your breath for as long as possible, or you do the absolute most that you can possibly do of any given thing without catastrophically failing. This compared to comfort max is where basically you hold your breath or you do the thing in freediving until you no longer feel comfortable. Now, the value of doing comfort maxes is that it allows us to find the lowest hanging fruit of things that we can work on and improve on to have the biggest impact on our overall breath hold time or our overall dynamic time or whatever, without also adding in a bunch of other stressors as we carry on. So for example, if I hold my breath for 3 minutes, and the thing that stops me from enjoying myself is that I get a strong tingling feeling in my fingers and toes, and it feels really uncomfortable. That's really good to know. If I were to continue on with that breath hold, I would then begin to experience other things. I would experience panic in the mind. I would experience a need to move and wiggle. I would, whatever else may come around. Those are all things that that only muddy the understanding of what my lowest hanging fruit is. Does that make sense? So by doing comfort maxes, especially in the very beginning, as we are really focusing on practicing and getting into training, comfort maxes allow us to pick a few things that we can focus on and direct our attention to. Because again, if we have too many things that we are focusing on, none of those things will get done very well. We'll cover that a little bit in specificity in the specificity cycle. So we want to be doing comfort maxes, as this is going to be the best place for us to figure out the lowest hanging fruit of our mental relaxation, of our physical capabilities, of our technique work, of our strength training. All those things, when we start to experience a discomfort that we no longer enjoy sitting in, that is where we can start to develop goals around those things. Yeah? Cool. Great. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. And then as they pop up and as we get to the end of a slide, I will take a look at them. Let's see. Okay, great. So we're now going to move. No, we're going to go into SMART goals first. Cool. So once we have our data, we can then go back into our corporate lives and set some SMART goals. I'm sure many of you guys who have worked in a corporate setting have seen this before, and you are frustrated as all hell having to look at it again and again and again. That said, it is important for us to define clear goals that are going to that basically tell us what the criteria of meeting the goal is within that goal. So often I hear people tell me, oh, well, I want to dive deeper, or I want to reach the national record, or I want to hold my breath longer. I want to be more relaxed in the water. What the hell does any of that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't necessarily know where you're starting from. I don't necessarily know what that actually means for you. And so by using these SMART goal criteria and defining all of these things, we can then have clear goals that when we look at it, we say, okay, rather than I want to dive deeper, we can say with specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound metrics that by the end of a 4-month training cycle, I want to increase my depth in constant weight bifins from 30 meters to 40 meters. That is a much better goal than I want to dive deeper, because I know when I need to do it by. I know how what the progression or what the change is going to be. And if we have done our work around attainable and realistic thinking, which I'll cover in a second, that should all be very achievable. So again, SMART goals stand for specific. So they have real numbers with real deadlines. They are measurable. We want to be able to track our progress throughout the training cycle. The goal should be attainable, so it should be challenging but possible. So I shouldn't say, if I'm a 30-meter diver, I want to get to 100 meters in 4 months. That is not going to be attainable. Or better yet, maybe 30 to 40 meters could be attainable as long as I have access to depth training. If I only have access to a pool, I can't really create a goal that says I want to add 10 meters onto my my depth diving, for example. Realistic, being realistic about not only what you are capable of doing from a physical perspective, but also from a time perspective. Does your work schedule allow you to have this much training to achieve this goal, for example. And then time bound. There's a deadline where you will recheck your progress, and that is, within periodization, that is built in with the macro cycles. Yeah, cool. So what I'd love to quickly do is hear if anybody has a goal they would like to share that we can discuss. We can basically, if you have a goal that you would want to shout out, we can then use it as an example throughout the session today. So we can either take a few minutes to have a little think, or if anybody has any goals that they would like to share to start out with, we can use that as a starting point for our progress throughout this session. Any takers? Tiffany, do you want to share one of your goals? Because we set some already,
Those weren't for static. So we should probably focus
No.
on a static goal here.
Okay. So, okay. Do you want to create one right now?
Um,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
yeah, you've put me on the spot. Okay, how about let's do a few things at once. I can do 4 minute breath hold. I've done 5:33. I want to be able to comfortably do 5 minutes every session by the end of the spring here. And in order to get through that, I'm going to have to better be able to deal with my contractions in that last minute period, which also includes mental techniques. So I've been there before. I think it's attainable and realistic.
Mm-hmm. But you want to go from it being a struggle to it being something that you can do every single time with comfort and enjoyment through the use of stronger contraction blocking and mental techniques.
Yes.
Great. That is a fantastic SMART goal. It is very specific. It's got good measurements. It is, I believe, attainable. It is realistic, depending based on the amount of time that you are spending in the pool training, and it's got the time frame of it like about 3-ish months, which is fantastic. So yeah, that is a incredible and very good SMART goal. Thank you for letting me pick on you.
I have similar numbers for the star, like 5 minutes goal, and I have a similar goal with DNF as well.
Okay.
Like going from 70 meters to maybe 100 meters before the summer.
Okay.
But I've been doing a lot of technique training for a long time, and I haven't been pushing the length. It's a bit similar with the star training.
Cool. Okay.
And I have a restriction of maybe just being able to do one star session and one DNF session a week, basically, due to life. So I
Life.
can't
Yeah.
I can't do many repetitions or many cycles or many training sessions.
Great. Okay. So essentially by 3 months from now, you want to increase your dynamic no fins personal best from 70 meters to 100 meters through improved technique work, but also recognizing that your access to the pool is limited.
Yeah. And being comfortable with stretching the length.
Perfect. Okay, great. So doing 100 meters comfortably.
Yeah, I've been repeating technique for a few years now, but I haven't been pushing the length. So I want to be comfortable doing it longer and longer.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Got it. Great. Have you been doing any strength training?
Not much.
Cool. Okay. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. I think that's another good goal. I think it could be achievable depending on what other time you can give to dry exercise. And And of course, I haven't seen your technique, so I don't know. I couldn't say personally if it is attainable, but I mean, from the sounds of the work that you've been putting in, it does sound like what needs to happen now is just progressing with your comfort, which I think can happen as part of your static training and can also happen as part of just dipping your toe into this comfort, adding a few little meters here and there every single time, and also improving strength. So yeah, I think those are both very good SMART goals.
Good.
Nice. Thanks, team. Okie dokie. Cool. Alrighty. So we can now move on into our training cycle. And this is going to mirror what we've been doing already with you guys for the static stuff. So we begin with high volume and low intensity. We do a high amount or a long training session, but the intensity is quite low. The main goal of the session is to build our foundation or build our base. If you have ever run, a race before, you know that where you begin is just by doing long runs with very little intensity. You just go outside and you run on flat ground and you just kind of go for as long as you can in operating around like the 2 sort of range of intensity on your computer or whatever it says. During this time, we are working on improving your overall fitness and well-being for training. And our capacity for being able to train overall. So this is also where we begin to implement a training routine that we are going to follow from here on out. So we begin with sessions where the intensity is low, but we start to build out, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do strength training, and Tuesday, Thursday, I do breath hold training. And then weekends I take off, for example. So not only are we building the physical base, we are also building the mental framework for maintaining training across a long period of time. We're getting into the training cycle. When we are talking about training in the gym, we are talking about a concept called hypertrophy, which is increasing the size of our muscle fibers through training. This concept you can look up online, and it's a very well understood training concept. Basically, the idea behind it is that the larger the muscle fibers you have are, the greater capacity for adaptation to specific muscle types they are going to have. And we'll get into a little bit into that in the next training cycle that we talk about. Great, there we go. At the same time, during this phase, we are also looking at a mental training focus. So as we have been working together, we have been trying to use mental techniques, mental relaxation tools, and basically use them in a low intensity setting, get to know which ones work best for us, play with them, adapt with them. And then as we have now started to move into the medium intensity work, we're now going to increase the intensity and see which of those tools are better in the medium intensity phase of our breath holds. Yeah. This is basically like we are learning all these tools with training wheels on, so to speak. Yeah. Wait, why is this not? There we go. No. Yes, there we go. Great. So, what are we talking about here? So in the pool and in static, we are primarily working on building high CO2. And that's what we did with you guys. We just built a ton of CO2 and you guys just sat in it and you experienced the first contraction, experienced the first urge to breathe, and you used mental tools and physical relaxation tools to relax through those sensations and experience it and sort of desensitize your brain to those sensations. In the pool, we are just swimming distance. We are just doing laps. We are building CO2 there as well. We can also be doing CO2 swimming drills, where rather than breathing every stroke, we breathe maybe every 4 strokes. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, or every 6 strokes, or every 8 strokes, or doing a ladder where you do 4 strokes, then 6 strokes, then 8 strokes, then 10, then 8, then 6, then 4, up and down, building that CO2. And again, we're talking about mental technique efficiency and practicing using those mental tools. In the gym, we are focusing on, again, hypertrophy, where we are trying to increase the size of our muscle fibers. We're going to talk a little bit about 1 rep max and looking at number of reps and number of sets. So a rep would be a bicep curl of 1 rep, 2 reps, 3 reps. And then a set would be, for example, 8 reps and doing that 3 times with rest time in between. Rest is an incredibly important piece when creating muscle adaptations. We'll cover that again in the next few slides. So for those that don't know your 1 rep max, which I imagine would be most of you, because the usual way that you test a 1 rep max is you go into the gym and you have an idea of how much weight you can do with just like 1 bench press. And then you get onto a squat rack or a bench press rack, and you just do it. And you just try and you put all of your energy into 1 movement, and then you bring it back down, and then that's it. Obviously, that's a very challenging thing to do for us as normal humans. High-level athletes have teams of people working with them to help them achieve and track their 1 rep max. For us, what we can do is we can select a weight, and we can do as many reps as we can until failure. So if I grab a 20 kilo weight and I do 3 bicep curls, 1, 2, 3, and I can't do any more, then I will put 3 reps of 20 kilograms into a 1 rep max calculator online, and it will then calculate my 1 rep max for me. And then most of the time there will also be calculators for, okay, now that we know your 1 rep max for bicep curl, we can now apply that to hypertrophy. How many reps, how many sets of that? For strength, for endurance, for power. These calculators exist online, and they are fantastic. So I'm not going to talk too much about any kind of calculations of that in this presentation, because once we're done here, you can just go online and find a calculator, and it will generally calculate it for you. Once you know generally about how many reps, how many sets you can do of 1 muscle movement. So there's that for the gym, and then we're overall looking for cardiovascular health. So this is the period where we are looking at running, we're looking at swimming, we're looking at cycling, all those things. Some light endurance exercise is great for just making sure that the body has a good capacity for exercise. And then with flexibility, what we are doing is we are just looking at overall general flexibility and wellness. So yoga or Pilates, or doing some just aerial silks classes, any of that sort of fun, full body mobility stuff is great for this period, because we want our bodies to be overall balanced and strong as we move into the next cycle. Yeah? Cool. Any questions on that? Great. Excellent. Moving right along. We now move into where we are right now in your training. We are in the medium volume, medium intensity phase. This again is about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what you sort of need to work on with your goals. During this period of training, the primary goal is to have a specificity of movement and skill. So what does that mean? We're basically transitioning away from overall fitness to now training specific movements, specific training of mental adaptations that meet our chosen goals. So, for example, if my goal is to have a longer dynamic no fins, this is now me working on specific stretching for greater range of motion of my no fins. We are talking about ankle flexibility. We are talking about hip flexibility for my nice strong whip kick. We're talking about being able to rest my arms on the back of my head so that I don't put a banana in my back, or I don't have my arms out in front, or I'm not holding a lot of tension as I do the arm position. We are talking about, in the gym, we are now starting to move away from overall muscular fitness to now improving the muscle fiber type adaptation. So there is muscular specificity going on here, which we'll cover again in a second. And then overall, we are looking at technique focus. So the overall time of the training sessions is decreasing, but the intensity of the exercise that we are doing is getting harder. So our breath hold times are increasing. The weight that we are lifting in the gym is increasing, but we are doing less reps overall. That sort of stuff. Yeah. And we can now move into the conversation about chickens. Now, when this is an important sort of way to think about muscular adaptations. When I was in my exercise science class, it was Thanksgiving in the US, which is typically a day where we ignore that the US killed a bunch of people and instead talk about turkeys. And my professor brought in a whole roast turkey and stood up in front of all 120 of us and started carving this turkey in front of us. And he was talking, he said, what's the difference between the light meat and the dark meat of a turkey? Or in this case, a chicken. And everyone was sort of like, well, I don't know. And he was like, okay, cool. Well, maybe think about it this way. What do chickens do all day? And then someone piped up and was like, oh, well, they run around and they eat food. And he was like, yes, exactly. They run around all the time. They are constantly running. But occasionally, when they are spooked, they can also fly, kind of. They can put in a burst of energy and they can get a little bit of lift off the ground. But then once they come back down again once they've avoided the danger, they then run away. And so this then led into the conversation around muscular fiber types. So some of you may be aware of this, that different muscular types there are different muscle types. There's type 1, type 2, and there's type 2A and type 2B or type 2X. Anybody know what the difference is between these muscle fibers? Or has anybody even ever heard of that? Or perhaps thinking about chickens and the light meat versus the dark meat? Which meat would be the dark meat? Or are we all vegans and we don't look at the inside of chickens? Because it's hard to get to the unmute button, I'll answer this for you guys. So the leg and the thigh is the dark meat, right? This meat is red, or it is highly vascular. This is because all of the fuel that is being delivered to those muscles comes from the blood. We are getting oxygen from the body, and we are also getting glucose and sugar from the body. All those fuel sources are delivered to the muscles, and the muscles then break that fuel down in those muscle fibers directly. And because of that, it is very vascular and it is quite lean. So it's not big and bulky. This compared to the breast meat of a chicken. This meat, as we all know, is the light meat. As we can see the light meat here, there is a very low capillary density. There's not a lot of fuel or oxygen being delivered to the muscle fibers. And this is because these muscle fiber types, the energy and fuel is stored within the muscle. So it sits there waiting until there's a very powerful movement that is done. For example, a chicken lifting itself off the ground, flying away 1, 2, 3 flaps, and then it drops down to the ground again. This is the difference between those two muscle fiber types. Type 1 is for endurance. Chickens run around on the ground all day. They are constantly moving. And so the muscles constantly need a refueling of those energy sources. Whereas the chicken rarely flies, but when it does, the energy is always stored there. Yeah, so they can flap 1, 2, 3 times and then they're done. When we think about this as it pertains to us, the type of people who have these muscle fiber types in a high concentration are our endurance athletes. They are people who are doing ultra marathons. They are the ones who are doing, triathlons, giant, bouts of exercise where the overall load isn't very high, but it's for a long period of time. We have down here at the bottom power athletes. These are people who are doing powerlifting. They are people who are they are the sumo wrestlers of the world. They are the linebackers in American football, where they have to basically just stop somebody in front of them for 2, 3 seconds, and then their job is done. Type 2A is more of a strength focus. This is what you would see generally in CrossFit. Or sort of a combination of the two. They're looking for explosive power, but over a prolonged period of time. All these muscle fiber types exist in all of us at any given time. It's that the percentage of the muscle that is made up of type 1 versus type 2A versus type 2X is different for each person, depending on the adaptations that we have developed. And this is going to be the same for us as freedivers as well. When we are talking about constant weight, for example, we are thinking more in terms of power because we need power to kick through that positive buoyancy in the surface. We then enter free fall and we drop and we let our body recover. And then as we turn around, we begin with power to get some momentum. And then we transition over into strength over a longer period of time where we are basically using energy to get back up to the surface again. In dynamic, we are looking more of a strength focus and a bit of an endurance focus because we don't need to put a lot of energy into each kick. We have little kicks going on and then we glide, a little kick and then we glide. We're not fighting any changes in buoyancy. So we can keep the consistency of our energy and effort into our finning the same. And then in static, we are doing a whole lot of nothing. And because of that, we want to try and keep the adaptations to using as little oxygen as possible. So what we can see here is the way that the energy is metabolized or broken down in the body here. For type 1, it's aerobic with oxygen. Type 2A is aerobic and anaerobic. So a combination of with oxygen and without oxygen. And anaerobic, as I said, takes place with no oxygen at all. So from our perspective as freedivers, obviously we want to be in the anaerobic sort of area with our muscle fibers because we want to conserve the oxygen for our brain to stay conscious. Is that all making sense? Cool. Again, we're going through a lot right now. We pretty much just covered about 2.5, 3 weeks of a training of a semester in 2 slides. So if you guys have questions, please do feel free to write them down. Cool. So for us as freedivers, what our muscular adaptation is going to be is going to depend partially on what our goals are. If we are doing dynamic in the pool, We want to be more strength and a little bit endurance focused, but still we want to be strength and power sort of primarily. For constant weight, we generally want to be more power focused with a little bit of strength focus. Yeah. Again, depending on if you are training for power or strength, your recovery time in between the number of sets that you do is going to change. Power workouts typically have you doing less reps, so less bicep curls overall, but you use more weight. Strength is generally what you'd think of as doing between 8 and 10 reps and having about a minute to a minute and a half between each recovery set. Again, look those up online. You'll have much more specific information as it pertains to you. When we are talking about training static during this medium volume, medium intensity phase, we are getting into hypoxia, which again is what we are doing now. We are doing longer breath holds, but we're doing less overall training time. The intensity is increasing, or the intensity has decreased. So the intensity is increasing. The volume is decreasing. And we then also want to be extending the use of the mental tools that we developed in the high volume, low intensity phase now into medium volume, medium intensity. So we're basically taking the tools that worked well in the first part of our breath hold and seeing if we can also take them into the next part of our breath hold where the intensity increases. If we can, great. If we can't, then we adapt and we find other tools that will work in those higher intensity scenarios. In terms of flexibility, as I said, this is where we are beginning to focus on specific ranges of motion. So if we need better adaptation or better flexibility in our shoulders, this is where we're focusing on our shoulder flexibility. We're maybe doing some thoracic cavity flexibility of stretching the intercostals, stretching the diaphragm, stretching the chest and the back, so on and so forth. Yeah. Cool. How does that sound for medium volume, medium intensity? Great. Perfect. We then, from there, move into our peaking phase. This is low volume and high intensity. This is about 1 to 3 weeks. And basically the goal here is that we are increasing the intensity even higher. We are doing even less total volume. And the goal is basically to try and train like we are going to be competing. So at this phase, if our goal was, for example, to increase our depth progression, but we were doing some training in the pool where we were increasing our hypoxic threshold, we were increasing our CO2, this is where we would move out of the pool and then into doing depth sessions where we are making sure our EQ is working. We're making sure that the adaptations from strength and power have taken hold. We're making sure the technique work is being transitioned from dynamic into now modifying it as we go through positive buoyancy into neutral into negative. We're starting to run our work that we're doing, our training, like we would do in our competition setting. Yeah. These are sub-maximal attempts with longer periods of recovery in between the attempts, and we are maintaining the gains in our muscle fibers and our development from the previous months. Yeah, training volume decreases, but the intensity is about as much as you can manage. This is where we are getting into intentional practice again. So from here, we are getting as close as we can to performing what we are going to do in our competition setting. So this is where we are really making sure that our warm-up and official top timing is all correct. We are using our gear that we're going to use during competition. So maybe during our pool sessions, we were using a pair of fins that fit our feet a bit more. But now that we're going into a dynamic competition, we're going to get out our competition fit monofin that we know squeezes the hell out of our feet, but is going to be how we are competing. So we're going to get used to the feeling of that on our feet. We are looking at our nutrition and competition meal day plans, what we're going to eat the night before. We're making sure that anything that we are eating isn't going to upset our stomachs, all that sort of stuff. This is also a great time to really intentionally use visualization. in your training, where you can stay seated, on the bus going to work, or sitting at home or on your lunch break, and you can just sit there and you can either visualize the dive yourself that you're going to be doing, where you see yourself walking into the pool and you get all your gear and you set it down, you do your warm-ups, you get moved over the competition zone, you start to hear the official top, you relax, you see yourself doing the dive, and you feel the power of each kick that you do and each arm pull that you do, and you feel contractions happen and they feel relaxed and they feel good, and you remember your training and all these things. You can use visualization as a way to basically practice all of this without actually getting into the body or getting into the water and stressing your body out as well. Yeah? Cool. Great. From our high intensity, low volume cycle, we are looking at operating at 90 to 95% of the goal we have set to achieve for ourselves. This is a phase that we are looking at even greater hypoxia in the body. We are continuing to extend those mental tools into greater amounts of discomfort. And again, we're also seeing what the limits of those tools are. Again, built on the medium volume, medium intensity training that we developed from there. In the gym, we are looking at performance of 85% for our 1 rep max. We're looking at 1 to 3 reps. Again, and looking with a lot of recovery time in between those sets. This is again to focus on power training. And then for flexibility, we want to maintain our flexibility during this time and rather focus on using or looking at flexibility for the purpose of warm-ups and stretching before a competition or before the attempt for testing. From here, we're going to move into our taper period. We're almost done. Bear with me. We move into our taper period, where we are going to bring back the intensity and also bring back and increase the load a little bit. The whole idea for this period of about 1 to 2 weeks, 3 weeks at most, is that you are focusing on maintaining the progress that you have done while maximizing your body's ability to recover before the competition. So before the competition, obviously, we don't want to have an exhausted body that is trying to recover from lots of training and practice. We want to have a well-rested nervous system. We want to have fully recovered muscles. We want to be well-nourished. All of those things then mean that when we show up on competition day, we are going to be able to do our maximal attempt and basically achieve the goals that we have set. So we're going to move away from high intensity and basically move to the more medium or low volume sessions that we did at the beginning of the training cycle. And yeah, again, if we don't let our body recover during this time, we will not be fully recovered enough to perform maximally during testing. So during this period, we are in the pool looking to go back to medium or low intensity sessions. We're letting the mind recover as well as the body. So we're just having some easy and chill sessions where you just really feel good about the training that you're doing. Again, it's maintenance. It's nothing. We're not trying to increase anything. At this point, we are looking back at the training that we've already done and trusting that the training that we've done is as much as we could have done. And now this part of our training is going to mean that we can perform maximally at the end. In the gym, we're easing back again to general fitness with a mild load on the body. So again, going back to yoga again, or gentle Pilates, or doing some sort of secondary activity, like going rock climbing or bouldering, and nothing like intense or explosive, like just very casually, very slow, just sort of like for fun, doing some rock climbing or doing some other sort of activity is really great for just keeping your body sort of in motion without putting too much stress onto it. And then again, same thing, maintaining flexibility during this time. Yoga is fantastic here. And then we get into our competition. Hooray, we've made it. So basically the goal here is to just do our best in competition. And I wrote down, if this is your first competition, remember that the main thing you're going to want to do is to actually focus on experiencing what a competition is truly like. You can practice competitive conditions by having an official top and doing warm-ups and doing a 1 rep max, or doing a competition mock dive. But when you are there with other people and everyone is sitting around and they are stretching or they're doing their own thing, and then someone comes up and, like, in depth competitions, they put a separate dive computer onto you. Then there's times that you need to be able to move around and go to different places. It's far better for your first competition to go into it with an open mind, knowing that you are just going to go and do your best. Ignore major, like, goals. And I would say that, in terms of goal setting, if you're going into your first competition, the goal should be to just do your best with overall general strength, overall general ability, and instead focus on, what does it feel like to dive in a competition? What things stressed me out? What things did I really enjoy? What things do I want to work on with my competition setup for the next one? That would be how I sort of would think about that sort of goal for your first competition. But I digress. So some other piece of advice for competitions is, don't change your dive strategy at the very last minute. You will see people doing stretching that you think, oh, that's actually a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe I should do that. Or, oh, this person's eating a bunch of beetroot before getting into their competition. Maybe I should eat some beetroot. And then you change your strategy last minute, and then suddenly you didn't realize that beetroot juice is going to give you the shits. And so you show up at your competition and you're like, actually, I have indigestion and I can't do my competition now. This sucks. So again, right before a competition is not the time to change everything. You have your strategy. You have done all this training prior to this. Trust the training, and then take notes for the next cycle of training. Yeah? Maybe you want to try beetroot juice for the next time. Don't do it during the competition. Do it afterwards when you have time to sit on the toilet, because beetroot juice gives you indigestion. I'd also remind you guys to not go for a max before the competition. Some people will do this, and I've seen many national record holders do this, where they show up at a competition and the warm-up day, they do a new personal best. This runs counterintuitive. This runs counter to what we've done in our training. We have done all the training ahead of time. We need to trust that training. We know what we can achieve doing from our peaking phase. We know that adding 2 extra meters on to our peak dive is not going to be a train smash. It's going to be just fine. We don't need to prove that to ourselves at the pool. All we need to do in the prep day is make sure our weighting is correct, make sure that we know if there are any ups or downs in the pool, or we know what the competition setup is going to be on the open line. And we just sort of get into the headspace of that space for competition day. So please don't do a max before you are going into competition. Just make sure that you are trusting the progress that you have made. And again, periodization is designed to be a framework for that trust, right? We have done everything correctly. All the science has gone into how we are planning our training. You can trust that training. You don't need to do some crazy maximal attempt before you do your maximal attempt. That's just silly and a waste of energy. Use competition as a time to stress test everything, not just physical abilities. So still use a competition as testing. And in doing this, we can talk about journaling. Whoops. No, go back. There we go. So again, we want to make sure that we are tracking our progress throughout our training. I know Tiffany has set up a online a online. Wait, I need to stop sharing this one. All right, she's set up a journaling sort of thing for you guys to use, so that you can practice tracking this data on your own. I would encourage you guys to do to track not only your breath hold times or your just what you did in the session, but also track some sort of soft subjective things. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I feel happy, I feel rested, I feel loved, I feel motivated, I feel confident. And then at the same time, also tracking at the end of the session, things like contractions felt comfortable, the urge to breathe felt comfortable, I had an enjoyable session, I completed this session with a little bit more in my tank, I could have gone a little bit harder, I am excited for the next training session. Using all of these things in combination with tracking your progress and your breath hold times and all of that means that you can see how your sort of day-to-day life of feeling happy or rested has an impact on your breath hold times. So this is a journal session from one of my clients where we basically have tracked these stats. You know, I can generally say that he hovers around an 8 to a 9 for most of his things. And so that tells me then that on a day when he puts down a 2, we can then look at that session and see what impact it had on his on his breath hold times or on his motivation. And as you can see, he didn't actually end up doing the session as a result of that. So the very superficial thing is, yeah, well, he needs to rest more if he's going to be keen to do his sessions. But on the other hand, you know, maybe if he gets 2 hours less of sleep, we can think about that as well on terms of his overall performance. Something else to note is that tracking data like this means that you can basically track your progress towards burnout, which leads me into my final slide of the day. Let's see. So we go back to sharing this, and this. Great. So how do we avoid burnout? We're going to rest. Resting is very important, obviously. But like I said, having a journal means that you can basically determine your canary in the coal mine. Basically to sort of help you know when your progress is beginning to be hurt by the load of training that you are doing. So by looking at those numbers from Stefano, I can see that, you know, maybe every now and then there's a little bit of a drop in one of his numbers, but overall his numbers stay the same. But if week after week I start to see these numbers drop more and more and more and more, I can then say, okay, what's going on here? Stefano, what's happening? Are you stressed at work? Is this workload too much for you? You know, how can we change this program so that we can still make progress towards this goal? Because if you're missing sessions, obviously you're missing out on training. So I would rather change the overall training schedule or change the goals even to better reflect what you are capable of doing. You know, again, we need to be realistic about our goals. And if a goal goes from being realistic to not being realistic, we then need to shift that goal. And it's fine to change that goal throughout our training, because goals should be achievable. It is unrealistic for us to say, okay, well, I'm going to maintain my training plan of roughly 15 hours per week, but also I have a newborn child. That is probably going to be unattainable. So, yeah. Is that all making sense? Great. Cool. So the final thing here, before I open it up to any final questions we may have, I'm going to show you guys a training calendar. And this training calendar is straight from one of my training clients. So this is he, spelled G-U-Y, but pronounced he. As we can see here, I have started by splitting this calendar into the different mesocycles, right? So we've got our high volume, low intensity in orange. We've got our medium volume, medium intensity in purple. We then shift to high intensity, low volume in green. We've got a taper period, and then we have comp time. Yeah, so we have our broad mesocycles. So let me scroll back up through here. Great. So he has identified that he's going to be working on more of a medium volume, medium intensity focus for his goals. So his goals are to increase his comfort with hypoxia. So more of the medium volume focus in his training. He also wants to focus on his technique work in order to cross off all the requirements for his instructor's certification. And we have identified these goals and we have created SMART goals out of them. But broadly speaking, based on those goals, we have identified that we are going to have him in a high volume, low intensity phase for a shorter amount of time. Prior to this, we have him doing other stuff already. So we sort of know his base is already pretty set. We're still going to take that time in the first few weeks to start with base setting. And then, again, with stretching and strength focus, staying out of the pool for now. And then we're going to move into more of the intentional training with some breath hold training, some yoga and thoracic cavity stretching separately, and then also strength sessions. So he has put aside a lot of time with work. He has shifted his work schedule around so that he has the time to basically do these sessions. Also take time to rest in between the day. So he generally he doesn't eat lunch, but he does take a nap during his lunchtime. So he'll snack all throughout the day and then he will nap for an hour during lunchtime. So if you see that there's not a lot of rest on here, it's because he has built that in already. So in the medium volume phase, as you can see, we are going to spend more time in it than the high volume, low intensity. When I generally work with somebody, I will create these breath hold sessions, just like I've done with you guys, where I will create videos for you guys to follow along with. Tiffany, Vale, Jeanette, all of you guys are basically training with them, and they are following the plan that I have given them. So all you guys are doing is following along with the plan that's been created for you. And so when I work with a one-on-one client, that's what I do here as well, is I basically put out, every single one of these sessions, I put in what they're going to do on that day. I give them access to a journal that they can log all their details into. And then all that information gets tracked by me on my back end. We can see that we've got strength in here still. We've got stretching still. And we have shifted away from the high volume, low intensity to medium volume, medium intensity loads on the body. As we transition away from medium volume into high intensity, we can see that things begin to change a little bit. We begin to add more intentional rest sessions in. So we are dropping the volume. So we're not doing the large amount of stuff that we were doing before. We are now dropping to sessions where a breath session may be higher intensity, but the strength session may be lower intensity. There is more of a focus on one individual session that's going to be the high intensity session. And then again, we're throwing in more rest. Rest is a very important piece of this whole concept. If our body is not resting, then it's not recovering. And if it's not recovering, then it's not adapting to the stress that we put on it. Yeah? So we have our 3 weeks of high intensity, where we have shifted away. We are resting more. We have moved into higher specificity as well. So we are now doing more dive sessions where the whole idea is to basically transition his strength and pool technique work from dynamic now into depth. So that's what we're doing in this high intensity cycle for him. And then we get into September. We have our taper where, again, all the intensity stuff drops off. We go back into low volume training sessions. We have a single dive session in here just to sort of, feel the water, single strength session just to maintain a little bit. And then basically we pretty much go full on into rest. And then we go into the competition that weekend. And then we repeat until you no longer want to do freediving and you want to do something else. Cool. All of this said, for you guys, if you are, he has really taken a lot of time and effort to dedicate to his freediving training here. So this is a schedule that I would say this is a pretty intense schedule. For most of us, we have our work that we go to, we have our kids that we take care of, we have our plants that we need to water, and we basically have like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours that we can really dedicate to training on, 3 times per week. If that's the case, a normal training cycle would look like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday with training, with Tuesday, Thursday, and the weekend off. Or if you want to increase the intensity a little bit, you can do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday training days, with Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday being rest days. I would say, if you can, start with just one primary focus and pick one or 2 goals that are focused in one specific area. So, for this course that we're running, we're focusing only on static. I know a lot of you guys want to do a dynamic training cycle as well, which I'm chatting with the crew about making happen. But for right now, our focus is static. And a training cycle for static can simply look like 3 training sessions per week or 4 training sessions per week, where you just jump into the pool, do breath hold training, and you will see a lot of improvement as a result of that. For me personally, I went from a 2.5-minute breath hold to a 7.5-minute breath hold in about a year, training 3 to 4 times per week. And just with sheer, or just by showing up time after time and just doing the training, I just got to that point. Your experience may vary, but the main point is to continually show up and do the best that you can every single day. And put your body under that load and it will adapt, and then put more load onto it and then it'll adapt. Yeah? Cool. Great. Any questions? Again, I have dropped a semester and a half of knowledge onto you guys. So it was very broad, very fast. But yeah, are there any questions? Or did I absolutely nail it on the first try? Great. Okay, perfect. I guess I'm the best teacher in the world then. Cool. All right. Well, if and when you guys do think of any questions that you might have, please feel free to post them in the group chat, and I will answer them. Again, this video will be available for you guys to watch later on. I will post it in the group chat as well. And yeah, as we progress through the training that you guys are doing in person and your online training, think about these concepts and how you can see how we've developed this training plan to still meet the sort of mesocycles of each chunk. Think about what each mesocycle is designed to be doing: technique work, high volume, low intensity stuff, refining your technique, all that sort of stuff. Really use that as the focus of what you want to work on and achieve in your breath training session when you get in the water. And be intentional about it. Great. Cool. Yay, fireworks. Cool. Alrighty. Then, in that case, if there's nothing else, I will be in touch with you all shortly. Have a think about what kind of workshop you guys would want to do next. Who would you want to talk to? Maybe it's not specifically a workshop topic, but it is a person. Maybe you want me to try and get Alexi on the phone call with us and you can ask him a bunch of questions. Ideally, though, I'd like to have a topic that I could make him talk about so that he doesn't have to just ramble on. Because if he has no topic, generally he will just kind of talk about anything. And it's very interesting to watch him talk, but he sort of goes off the rails sometimes because he just gets excited. So let me know who you'd want to hear from and what you'd want them to talk about. Feel free to post that in the group chat. And between Adam and I'm sure we can find them or find someone who is just as good. So yeah, cool. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll let you all get to bed, and I'll see you all very soon. Cool. Mwah. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Oh, goodbye, baby. See you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.